coming to you live from the brand new GoPro Hero 10. Today's entire live stream will be filmed on the GoPro Hero 10. So obviously when doing a live stream, the maximum quality this can be in for YouTube is 1080p, and it will have a reduced bit rate, but I'm doing today's entire live stream in 1080p, 24 frames per second. So the GoPro Hero 10 I've had for several days now, and I've been using it several hours each day. We've been on a lot of adventures lately, and I've been testing it out, testing all the different modes, all the different settings, figuring out what I love about this camera, what I don't love, and I've got a lot of initial impressions I'd like to share with you today. And I will have a lot more videos coming after this one. This live stream is simply to talk about what I think about the camera so far, what I like and what I don't like. There are things in both areas. The good thing is the what I likes are much greater than the what I don't likes at this point. So starting off, the Hero 10 obviously has several new features on it. The biggest one is the brand new GP2 processor in here. The GP2 definitely makes a big difference. The GP1 had been in all of the GoPros since the Hero 6 Black. So it had been in the Hero 6 Black, 7 Black, 8 Black, and 9 Black. When a processor's been around for 4 years like that, it's gonna tend to show itself, and it really did on the Hero 9 Black. Any of you that own the 9 Black could relate to that rear screen being extremely laggy, and even when you push a button like to power it on or to record, there would be a lot of lag there. There would be like a couple second delay. I'm happy to tell you that on the 10 so far, there's no delay. Things are much snappier. That rear display, when you click on it to touch it, it responds immediately. You don't have to keep tapping over and over. Again, those of you that had the 9 know exactly what I'm talking about. It was very frustrating. GoPro did finally release firmware back in the summertime that fixed this, but that was honestly too late. I mean, the camera had been out for 9 months at that point, and it was a shame GoPro did not figure that out at release time. But thankfully with the 10, that GP2 processor in there makes a huge difference. Everything is snappy. There's a lot less lag. So that is a huge improvement, and that's something I wanted to talk about up front, because I know several of you have talked to me about that, and we've kind of shared frustrations on that. So I'm happy to say that that issue is good. The new processor is great on here. Now, as far as the quality that this camera can produce, I was honestly shocked that GoPro came out with 5.3 60 frames per second for their highest frame rate. I did not expect the sensor in there to be capable of doing 5.3 60. On the Hero 9 Black, the highest it would go was 5K 30 frames per second. So not only did GoPro double that frame rate on this camera, but they also added some additional resolution. So it's now 5.3K instead of 5K. So far, I'm very impressed with the quality of the footage. My videos, I'm not going to generally upload them at anything higher than 4K. But the nice thing is you can take that 5.3K and you can reduce the quality to 4K without it losing its crispness. So there's a method of doing that in a lot of editing software. And when you do that, it's gonna cram those pixels a little bit closer together. So 5.3K down to 4K, there's gonna be more pixels in there, but they're gonna be crammed closer together as the footage is set to 4K. So that is a really useful technique. It makes the 4K look extra good. So it's a technique I definitely recommend using. And I'm gonna have a future video that explains how to do that. Because that's really the biggest use case for the 5.3K in my opinion. The other big surprise is 4K 120 frames per second. So 4K 120 is great when you want that really crisp, buttery smooth slow motion. So the 4K 120 looks really good. I've tested it out, throwing some rocks in the stream, getting that splash, my toddler jumping up and down, me jumping off some stuff. Anything that's really fast motion that you want to do the slow motion with, 4K 120 is really nice. So props to GoPro for putting that in this camera as well. And then of course 1080p, you can now do 240 frames per second. I probably will not use that mode much because 1080p 240, the quality does not look quite as good. And if I'm doing a 4K timeline, I'm generally not going to want to put 1080 in there if it is true 1080 and not a 4K resolution that was reduced already. So for the 1080 240, I probably will not be using that much. It's still a nice touch if you have a 1080 timeline, but generally the 120 frames is going to be enough for me to work with for my slow motion, because that's going to be, for a 24 frames per second timeline, that's going to be reduced by 5 times. So the footage is going to be slowed down to 20% of its original speed. And for me, my slow motion uses, that's more than enough for me. So I'm probably just going to stick with that 4K 120 for slow motion. In the photo department, the megapixels offered on the camera has been increased a little bit, which is not really a big deal to me, because sometimes when there's more megapixels, that can create more noise. So to me, it's kind of a draw. It's a few megapixels higher, but it's not an extreme amount. However, they do have a mode where you can take a photo from 5.3K video footage and do a grab from that. So I think that is nice. I believe that photo is somewhere around the 19 to 20 megapixel range when you take it from the 5.3K video. So that is a useful feature. Now, since this camera does have the same sensor in there, I don't expect a lot of low light improvement. So far, I haven't seen a significant amount. I think it is a little bit better because GoPro has integrated some tone mapping, and with that new processor, I think it does handle the footage a little bit better with how it captures it. But I don't expect anything drastic. I do expect it to be about the same. When it's got that 2/3 inch sensor, you can only do so much with that. However, I am testing it with night lapses right now, and I'm also going to be doing some filming in lower light so that I can see, because I might be surprised, but so far, the little bit I've done with that, it looks about the same as the 9. Which honestly was kind of what I expected. I didn't expect anything drastic with this unless GoPro had upgraded the sensor, which I did not expect yet. I probably expect that with the 11 or the 12. So some other important things to note with the 10, it is the exact same size as the 9. So the nice thing about that is you can still use all of the mods that you had. The max lens mod still works, and the audio mod, any of the light mods, those all still work perfectly with this camera. You don't have to go out and buy new accessories, so that's great. Also, the battery is the exact same battery as the Hero 9 Black. So if you're like me and you already own about 5 or 6 batteries, those batteries are still fully compatible on the 10, which is a good thing, because the 10 having the same battery, you might have guessed, the battery life is not as good on the 10 as the 9. And that's naturally going to be because of that nicer processor. And also, if you're filming in the 5.3K modes, that's going to use up battery life quicker because it's simply higher quality footage. So batteries, if you buy the 10 and don't already own a couple batteries, I definitely recommend getting at least 2 or 3. And in addition to that, if you get one of the external power packs, I use a couple of those. Those are great too. So when I'm out filming all day, I can hook up my dual battery charger to that, and I can be charging 2 batteries while I have 1 battery in the camera. And then by the time the battery in the camera runs out, those 2 batteries will be well charged. And if I start off with 3 batteries fully charged, 1 in the camera and 2 extras, and then have the other 2 charging after I use them for the total of 5, I basically never run out of batteries. There's enough time where it would be impossible to run out unless I forgot to plug something in to charge, which has happened before. Always double check that it's plugged in. Other impressions of this camera, I haven't really noticed a lot of glitchiness with it. Initially, after I first turned it on and plugged in the battery percentage was visibly counting down. So it was going from 99 down to about 80 in about 2 minutes of time when I first powered it on. So what I did is I powered it off, popped out the battery, popped it in again, let it reset, and it was good to go after that. A couple other things to note. If you have a older generation of GoPro and you stick the micro SD card into the 10, I recommend copying all your footage off that first, because what I found is the 10 did not want to let me view my footage on the camera from the other cameras, and the recording seemed a little bit buggy until I formatted the card, which makes sense. It's always a good idea to format a card in a new camera for the first time, just because that camera is always going to be a little bit different, and the way the card and the camera and all the chips interact, there could be some differences there. So I copied my footage off to the computer from the SD card, and then I formatted it in the 10, and after that, everything worked great. So I definitely recommend formatting the card first. It's a good idea to do so. Now, as far as price, the price is technically $50 higher. However, if you are already a GoPro subscriber and have the cloud service, the price will actually not be any higher. It will be the same as you paid for the 9. So if you are not a subscriber to GoPro Cloud, I do recommend checking it out. I am a recent subscriber to that. I had always done things the old school way, copied them off to my computer and edited that way. I still do that most of the time, but it is nice having that cloud service that can back up your footage, and it is much faster with the 10. I believe GoPro touts 30% faster speeds when you plug it in to charge. And the key is you just need to have the Quick app on your phone, and you need to have the GoPro mapped through that with whatever cell or internet connection you're using. So doing that, I've tested it already, and it is indeed faster with the uploading speed. But also, if you want to plug it into your computer with the cable, I've noticed Windows detects the camera right away. I haven't tested on any of my Macs yet, but in Windows it shows the folder, it shows the camera, you grab your files, you copy them, it does it instantly. So in the past, there had been problems with the 9 and older GoPros. When you plug them in with the cable, sometimes Windows would not detect the camera, or you would have to unplug it and replug it several times before the files would actually copy. It was a super random buggy thing. Honestly, don't know why it took GoPro this long to figure that out. That's kind of unfortunate, but it does work now. So that's the good news there. But yes, back to the cloud service. If you already have that, this camera would just be $399. And if you don't have the cloud service, it's gonna cost you $499. Now, the good thing is when you go to buy the camera, you can sign up for the cloud service and you can get it for the $399 price. The cloud service will cost $49.95 a year, which is not bad because it is unlimited storage. And you also can buy up to 10 accessories per year from GoPro with 50% off the price. So if you haven't bought the Max Lens mod, or if you're looking at some of the other mods, those alone with 50% reduction could pay for what you pay for the cloud service per year. And it's also important to note that after you sign up for the cloud service, if you don't want to stick with it, as long as you cancel it before the next year, it will not auto-renew on you. So if you just want to sign up for it and use it for the year, see what you think, you've got no obligation to continue, and GoPro is not going to charge you more for the camera if you decide to cancel later on. So I definitely recommend getting that camera with the cloud subscription, just because the price is lower. And then, you can change your mind, and that's fine. Other impressions of the camera, the weight is about the same. The build quality feels solid still. I thought the 9 had a really good solid feel to it. It was a little bit thicker than the previous GoPros, and I like how it feels in my hand. I do think GoPro does not want to go much bigger with the cameras, so I'm glad to see the 10 maintain that size. That's part of the GoPro appeal, having a really powerful action camera that's in a very small form factor. The lens on this is what they call the hydrophobic. So this lens is supposed to repel water droplets better than any GoPro lens before. So for me, that use case for that is anytime I have it underwater, or anytime I'm using it like for a night lapse or a time lapse outside in bad weather, which by the way, it might rain today. I've felt a few drops, but so far no rain on me down here other than those few drops. But that lens is supposed to repel and shed the water really well. And so far I have not been in any rain or used it underwater, but I'm going to be testing that later today. And then tomorrow is supposed to be a really rainy day, so I'm going to be getting this out there and putting it through the test just to see. But that is a nice feature. And of course the lens is replaceable, so if you scratch or destroy this lens, you can just twist it off and you'll be good to go again. I believe GoPro sells the new lenses for, the new lens cap, sorry, it's a lens cover for $99, which is not bad. It's still kind of sad because it's just a, it's just a cap that goes over the actual lens, but it's not the end of the world if you scratch or destroy that at least. And then of course the Max Lens mod, as I mentioned earlier, that's fully compatible here, which is great. As far as the actual camera running for several minutes, this live stream's been going for about 15 minutes now, and the camera does get a little hot, but granted I'm running this in 1080p for the live stream, so it's not the best judge of that. But I've noticed when doing 5.3K extensively, the camera does get quite hot, and GoPro does say that's normal. I have not had it power off on me, so that's the good thing, is it is not powered off due to it getting too hot. I know with past GoPros that has sometimes been an issue. The only time I ever had that happen was if I was out in the bright sunlight for an extensive amount of time. So some of our hikes that we did in Hawaii, if we were out there in the coastal plain in the sunlight for several hours and I had the camera running a lot, it would power off sometimes, or it would just freeze up on me. So far that has not been an issue yet with this camera, which is good to see. Now it is September, it's a cooler time of the year, so that problem may not manifest itself either, but so far no issues with that. Some things that I found odd that were missing on this camera is 5.3K. You can only do 60 frames or 30 frames right now. You cannot do 24 frames per second. Extremely weird. I don't know why GoPro does not have that. I did some research and it looks like GoPro is going to be releasing the 24 frames per second mode with a firmware update in November. So I'll definitely be tracking that. I don't know what their explanation is for not including that, but I'm a 24 frames per second guy. I like my final footage to be in that. I can shoot in 60 or 30, and then I can interpret the frame rate as 24, but it's easier if you can just shoot natively in that. So again, I'm not sure why that's the case, but I'm sure GoPro has a good reason for that. And when that firmware is released in November, I'm definitely going to be updating it. Speaking of firmware, when you first take the camera out of the case, it has a sticker on the back now that tells you to update your firmware first. So props to GoPro for doing that. I'm a big advocate for running the most up-to-date firmware on the camera at all times, because it's going to give you all the latest features and all the best performance. So what you do now is you take the camera out and you connect it to the Quick app on your phone, and it will push the firmware update. Now, those of you that have seen some of my videos in the past, you know that I've featured the manual firmware update method because this method using the phone had been so incredibly buggy. The good news is the firmware update worked really well the first time for me. I did not have to go back and redo it again. So I am hopeful that's going to be the case going forward. If that is the case, I will do a quick video on how to update the firmware, because it may be helpful step by step for you guys to see in the future. But at this point, I will not be doing the manual firmware update method unless the method with the phone becomes buggy, in which case I will. But so far, that initial firmware update didn't seem to have any big new features. GoPro typically releases a firmware update on the date the camera's released, and that was basically the case again this year. So I am looking forward to that November firmware update. I'm kind of excited to see what that offers. Let's see, what else was I going to talk about here? These live streams are a little bit harder because I don't have any notes. I have to memorize everything up here. So it kind of makes it more fun though at the same time. And I just like walking along, talking to you guys like friends. I appreciate your support. The other thing I was going to talk about was the audio quality. So the audio quality, I don't think GoPro touted this camera as having any improvements on that, and I would agree. The audio quality just seems to be about the same as the 9. The 9 audio quality wasn't bad. It was pretty good, but again, it's just from this tiny little microphone here underneath the lens. So that can only do so much for audio quality. I do have a wireless mic connected to the camera right now, and I have the USB-C to 3.5 millimeter adapter here. So I have it plugged in via that. Because unfortunately, one of my wishes for this camera was a Bluetooth connected mic, and GoPro did not come through on that. So I'm gonna have to wait till next time. But at the same time, I'm happy to have a way to use an external mic so that we can have better audio quality. Other than that, I think I answered all of the initial impression questions that I had before this camera came out, and several of the questions that you guys had as well. I kind of read down through those and wanted to make sure I answered them all. So battery life on here, I don't think I specifically talked about how long it lasts. I would say what I have found is a full battery will last for about 1 hour of recording time. And after the hour, it's pretty much done. It's gonna be down to like 10% or so. And at that point, I'm ready to pull out the battery because it's gonna die anytime. On the 9, I believe I could get about an hour and 15 minutes out of it. So it's a reduction of probably like 20% in battery life, which is important to note. And again, I recommend having plenty of batteries and the charger and a battery pack, an external power pack. That's gonna help you make sure you're never out there somewhere without adequate battery charge. But overall impressions, the 10 is great. And I'm not just saying this when I say it is the best GoPro ever. The 9 previously was the best, and I still love the 9. I'm gonna keep my 9 for a while here, because I have a use case where I can use 2 of these at a time. But the 10 GoPro really did come through on it, especially with that new processor. That is the biggest thing. Having that processor, just to have it not be laggy anymore, it's really good. Thought I heard an animal running behind me. I've seen a few deer out here this morning. No bears yet, but maybe I'll see my bear later on. Oh, the other thing I forgot to mention is Hypersmooth. So Hypersmooth 4.0. I thought that GoPro had gotten the best they could with Hypersmooth 3.0, and that there really wasn't much further improvements that could be made, but they really have. Hypersmooth 4.0 is ridiculously smooth, and I don't know how they do it. They have really good research and development and engineers working on that, so good job, GoPro. Hypersmooth 4.0 is great, and I've really been liking that. And then the one last thing is the color modes. GoPro has 3 options now. In the past, it was just GoPro color or flat, but now they have 3 modes, and that newest mode is called natural. And natural is what I'm recording this entire thing in now. This entire live stream will not be edited. It will be presented to you exactly as I recorded it right here. But the natural mode does a really good job. It's probably gonna be my go-to mode when I don't want to do much color correction or any. GoPro has always had pretty good color science, and they've definitely come through with the natural mode. I like how it looks. It looks natural. So the flat mode I will still use when I wanna do a lot of color correction, and sometimes I might use the vibrant mode, which would be the equivalent of the GoPro color previously, but right now I'm really liking natural. So as soon as I'm done testing this week, I'm gonna be bringing you a lot of videos on all the best settings that I have found after my tens of hours of testing. And I'm also gonna be showing you what this footage looks like, what the slow motion looks like, and I'm gonna show you some of my time-lapse and night-lapse best settings on this camera. Those are gonna be a little bit different from some of my previous videos. Now that GoPro has improved this camera, it makes certain settings needing to be tweaked a little bit. So I'm gonna show you that as well. And then I'm gonna show you my recommended live stream settings based on what I do here. I won't quite know what I think about this camera until I get back and see it uploaded live. But I'm optimistic. It's looking pretty good on the screen here so far. So we'll see what that has to offer. In the meantime, if you have any questions I can answer, definitely ask them, and I'm happy I'm happy to let you know my thoughts on that. I am on the road doing some pretty extensive traveling right now, seeing a lot of cool things. And so I don't have a great internet connection where I am most of the time. The good thing for this live stream today is I was walking through an area of Verizon 4G LTE and some 5G. So I'm pretty optimistic that the quality of this live stream should be pretty good. It of course will not have the highest bit rate because that is limited when live streaming as well. So 1080p, 24 frames per second with a lower bit rate. You know, this footage, don't judge the GoPro based on this live stream. I'm walking through some lower light right now, by the way, so a little bit of a low light test. But yes, don't judge the camera by this live stream. The footage from it will be much better than the quality of this. But at the same time, what I see on the screen so far is looking pretty good. So I'm optimistic this live stream is gonna have some really good quality. But yes, like I said, if you have any questions or comments in the meantime, post them below, I'm happy to answer. I'm gonna have a ton of videos coming to you in the next couple weeks, starting next week when I'm back to the editing station. 5.3K video does need a good bit of editing, firepower on a computer. So I need to get back to my main editing rig before I can edit this footage. Some of the devices I have with me are not going to do it quickly, and I don't want to do something that would take 2 hours of time at home for 10 hours on vacation. So I'm gonna get that done as soon as I get back, and I will have a lot of great videos to show you. I'm really excited about this camera. And until we talk again, happy GoProing.